Don't tell me the director of operations actually has a sense of humor.
See, I told you I could make you smile. You owe me a dance now.
This place is incredible. We should finalize the deal tonight.
Absolutely. Let's toast our success.
Like, subscribe, and share if you want more stories like this. You don't want to miss where this one goes. 6 months earlier, Taeyong Moon had not wanted a bodyguard at all. "I don't need a shadow," he'd told his second-in-command, Kang Miho, in a voice that wasn't loud but wasn't negotiable either. "You need this one." Miho had slid a folder across the desk. 3 assassination attempts on rival bosses have failed because of her. She read threat patterns the security teams missed every time. Taeyong hadn't touched the folder. Does that matter? It didn't. He told himself it didn't. The first time he met Gianna, she was already in the room before he arrived, standing at the window of his office, studying the street below with her hands clasped behind her back. She didn't turn when he walked in. Didn't flinch when 2 of his men followed close behind. She said, without looking at him, "There's a white van that circled the block 3 times in the last 10 minutes. South entrance is your vulnerability. You'll want to move your morning meeting." He stopped walking. She turned then. Dark eyes, calm like still water over something deep. No nerves. No performance. Just assessment. "You're early," he said. "I'm always early." A pause. "Or you're late." The 2 men behind him went rigid. No one spoke to Taeyong Moon like that. He looked at her for a long moment. Then said, "Move the meeting." That was how it began. The contract was simple. She protected him, nothing more. She asked no personal questions. He maintained no personal interest. She was a professional tool, the most finely calibrated one he'd ever employed, and that was the entire story. He told himself that repeatedly in the weeks that followed. But he kept her closer than protocol required. Car rides that could have been solo, he requested her presence. Meetings that carried no real threat, she stood inside rather than outside the door. He told himself it was efficiency. Better intelligence. Seamless security. He did not examine it beyond that. Gianna, for her part, was exactly what the file had promised. She moved like she'd mapped every room before she entered it. She read danger in body language, in silence, in the way a man held his hands. She was 3 steps ahead of every situation and emotionally 3 walls deep behind her professionalism. She did not chat. She did not confide. She answered questions in precise sentences and never offered more than asked. He found it clarifying. Restful, almost, in a world where everyone around him performed constantly. One night, after a tense negotiation that had nearly shattered into violence, she'd driven him back through Seoul in silence. The city blurred past the windows. He'd been thinking about the 6 different ways the meeting could have ended in bloodshed and hadn't. Without looking up from his phone, he said, "How did you read Chen before I did?" "His left shoulder dropped when your second offer landed," she said. "People drop their guard when they've already decided to accept." He was going to say yes before he opened his mouth. He looked at her profile in the dark. "That's not in any security training." "No," she agreed. "It isn't." He almost asked where she'd learned it. Almost. He caught himself, looked back at his phone, and said nothing. That was the night the something he wasn't examining began to quietly grow. 3 months in, there was a man with a knife at a charity gala. It happened fast, the way real threats always do, not cinematic and slow but sudden and close, the attacker already inside the perimeter before the alarm registered. He came from the left, through a service corridor, blade low, moving with the particular focus of someone paid to succeed. Gianna was already moving before Taeyong fully processed the situation. She stepped directly between them, not frantically, not in a panic, with the same economic calm she brought to everything, and redirected the attacker's momentum, used his own speed against him, had him face down on the marble floor in under 4 seconds. The knife skidded under a table. A champagne glass shattered somewhere nearby. 300 wealthy guests stopped breathing simultaneously. Gianna straightened, adjusted her jacket, and turned to Taeyong. "Are you hurt?" He was looking at her, not at the man still groaning on the floor. "No," he said. His voice was level. His pulse was not. She nodded once, already reaching for her earpiece to coordinate extraction. Professional. Immediate. On to the next task. He kept watching her. Later, in the car, he said, "You could have let the perimeter team handle it. They were 40 feet away. That's too far. You put yourself directly in the line of." "That's the job," she said simply. He looked at her hands resting on the steering wheel. Completely steady. "Gianna." "Sir." "Thank you." A pause. Small, and somehow significant. "It's what you pay me for," she said. But she didn't say "you're welcome," and the silence that followed felt different from the silences before it. The thing about proximity is that it is patient. It does not announce itself. It works slowly, the way water works on stone, not crashing, just present, day after day, until the shape of everything has changed and you cannot remember what the stone looked like before. Taeyong Moon understood power. He understood negotiation, leverage, the geometry of fear. What he had never understood, what he had carefully avoided understanding, was this, the way a person could become necessary without permission. Gianna was necessary. It wasn't the protection, though that was real, and she was exceptional at it. It was something else. Something in the way she moved through his world without being corrupted by it. Something in the fact that she looked at him without performance, without calculation, without the faint shimmer of want that everyone else wore around him like a second skin. She looked at him like he was just a man. He didn't know whether to resent it or be undone by it. He chose, as he chose everything, to be neither. He controlled the feeling the way he controlled a room, with stillness, with distance, with absolute refusal to acknowledge what was happening. What was happening was that he was learning her. He knew she took her coffee black and that she didn't eat until after a location was secured. He knew she read on her phone during long waits but held the screen at an angle so no one nearby could see the title. He knew she had a scar along her left forearm that she never explained and that she touched it sometimes when she was thinking hard. He knew her laugh, the real one, was rare and sudden and nothing like her professional expression. He knew all of it because he watched her. He watched her the way he watched everything that mattered, quietly, completely, without letting it show. Then Baek Ji-young arrived. Baek was an ally in the loosest sense of the word, one of those men who existed in the space between friend and threat, useful enough to tolerate, dangerous enough to never fully trust. He ran a financial network that overlapped with Taeyong's operations in 3 cities, smiled too easily, and had the particular confidence of a man who had never been told no by anyone he found interesting. He arrived for a business meeting on a Tuesday, and within 6 minutes of entering Taeyong's building, he had noticed Gianna. "New addition?" he asked in the elevator, nodding toward her with the kind of casual interest that was not actually casual. "Security," Taeyong said. "Impressive." Baek glanced at her. "I can see why you keep her close." Gianna's expression didn't change. Her eyes flicked briefly to Baek's, measuring, categorizing, moving on. Threat assessment completed in 2 seconds. Non-combative. Low priority. She looked away. Taeyong said nothing. But something in his chest shifted, quiet and sharp, like a mechanism engaging that he hadn't known was installed. The meeting ran long. Baek was the kind of man who made everything run long, who mistook performance for intelligence and talked around every point before landing on it. Taeyong endured it with the patience of a man who had learned to treat boredom as a tactical advantage. Gianna stood inside the door. Still. Watchful. Baek made a joke at some point, directed at Taeyong but eyes sliding sideways toward Gianna, something about loyalty being the rarest currency. Gianna didn't respond. Baek smiled like she had. After the meeting, in the corridor, Baek stopped near where Gianna stood checking the exit route. "Former military?" he asked her. Yes, she said. Nothing more. Which branch? A pause. She looked at him. The kind that doesn't elaborate. Beck laughed, genuinely, surprised, and Taeyong, walking 3 feet ahead, heard it and stopped. He turned just enough to observe without appearing to observe. Beck was looking at Gianna with renewed interest. Fair enough, he said. I respect that. Gianna gave a small nod and returned to her sweep. Taeyong turned back and continued walking. His hand, inside his jacket pocket, had closed into a fist. Comment below, do you think Gianna knows exactly what she's doing to him? Or is she completely unaware? Tell me what you think. He started calling her into rooms unnecessarily. That was the first tell, the first crack in the architecture of control, and he knew it even as he did it. Meetings with lawyers, she stood inside. Dinners that were clearly social, she was 3 feet behind his left shoulder. A phone call he could have taken alone, he waved her in and watched her stand by the window while he talked, her eyes tracking the street below with professional focus, unaware of or indifferent to his gaze. You don't need me in here for this, she said once, after a low-stakes lunch meeting with a city official who was clearly already bought. I decide what I need, he said. She looked at him. Just for a beat. Something moved through her expression that wasn't quite amusement and wasn't quite annoyance but lived somewhere between the two. Yes, sir, she said. And stayed. He told himself it was operational preference. She started noticing. Not what was underneath, she was too disciplined for that, or perhaps too careful, but the pattern. The unnecessary proximity. The meetings that didn't require her presence but included it. The way his eyes found her in a room before they found anything else. One evening, during a security check of his penthouse before a private dinner, she moved efficiently through the rooms while he stood in the kitchen with a glass of water, watching her work. She came back to the main room and said, "Clear. But I noticed the building access log hasn't been updated in 3 days. Whoever maintains your security system is getting lazy. I'll have it handled. You should do it tonight. 3 days is a long exposure window." I know. She nodded, moved to gather her equipment. Then stopped. Can I ask you something? He set down the glass. You just did. Why do you keep me inside the room now? Silence. She turned to face him, professional, direct, not quite confrontational but not retreating either. The threat profile for your domestic meetings hasn't changed. The perimeter team is adequate. There's no operational reason to change the positioning. He looked at her. Maybe I want you where I can see you, he said. The words came out flatter than intended. Matter of fact. But in the quiet of the penthouse, they landed differently than they sounded. Her expression held. Didn't break. But something in her eyes shifted, just a fraction, just a depth change, like a light source moving behind dark water. That's not a security reason, she said finally. No, he agreed. It isn't. He picked up his glass and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there with nothing resolved and everything, somehow, sharper. Club Onyx was Baek Ji-young's territory, his event, his guest list, his energy. Taeyong had come because refusal would have communicated something he wasn't ready to communicate. Business moved through social occasions in this world. You showed up. You stayed composed. You left when it suited you. He had not expected Baek to find Gianna within the first hour. But there she was, east wall, stationed exactly where Taeyong had positioned her, and there was Baek, shoulder tilted toward her, saying something low and easy, and she was listening. Not just professionally parsing for threat. Actually listening. And then she had laughed. Taeyong walked away from the staircase railing. He found a corner near the private bar where the light was low and the sightline was clear. He ordered nothing. He stood there and told himself he was running threat assessment on the room, which was something he did at every event, which made the fact that his gaze kept returning to the east wall a simple matter of professional habit. He watched Baek say something else. Watched Gianna tilt her head, that small, precise gesture she made when something caught her interest. Watched Baek lean slightly closer. Taeyong's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone. Sent a text to Miho, pull Beck's last 3 financial transfers. Tonight. It wasn't related. He told himself it wasn't related. At 11:40 p.m., he walked past the east wall. Not toward it. Past it, on a route that happened to take him within earshot. Beck was saying, "You can't spend your whole life in other people's shadows. You're too." "I'm working," Gianna said pleasantly. Not cold. Not interested. Just factual. "You're always working." "That's correct." "Doesn't that get lonely?" A short pause. Taeyong kept walking. He heard her say, very quietly, "Sometimes." He stopped at the next corner. Sometimes. She had never said anything like that to him. Not once. In 6 months of daily proximity, of close spaces and long silences and moments that pressed against the edges of professional distance, she had never offered him that word. She said it to Beck in 40 minutes. He turned around and walked back to the upper level, and the whiskey he finally accepted from a passing server tasted like nothing at all. He didn't speak to her in the car on the way back. She drove, as she always did, hands easy on the wheel, city lights sliding across her face. He sat in the back and looked at his phone and saw nothing on it. At a red light, she said, "Beck Jeong made 2 passes at me tonight." He looked up. "I'm aware," he said. "I kept it professional." "I know." A pause. "You're quiet." "I'm always quiet." She glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Just for a second. He met her eyes, briefly, before looking away. "Okay," she said. The light changed. She drove. The city rushed past them and the silence was different from every silence they had shared before, heavier, loaded, the kind that happens when 2 people are not saying the thing they're both thinking about. He got out of the car without a word. She watched him walk into the building. Her hand stayed on the wheel for a moment longer than necessary. He called her at 1:17 a.m. She picked up on the second ring. "Sir. Are you still on premises?" "Parking structure. Routine sweep before. Come upstairs." A pause. "Is something wrong?" "No." Another pause. "Taeyong." She almost never used his name. Not sir, not Mr. Moon. His name. It landed like a key turning. "It's past 1 in the morning." "I'm aware of that." Silence on the line. "Okay," she said finally. She came upstairs. He was standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows when she knocked and entered, still in her suit from the evening, hair still pulled back, nothing about her that looked like midnight except the slight tiredness around her eyes that she would never admit to. "What do you need?" she said. He turned from the window. Looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know," he said. She held his gaze. "That's not an answer." "I know." "Taeyong. Don't go back to any of Beck's events." The words came out harder than he meant them to, edged with something that wasn't quite a request. Her expression shifted. Not to anger, not yet. To precision. The look she wore when she was taking something apart to understand it. "That's not your call to make," she said slowly, "unless there's a security reason. Consider it a security reason. I'd need you to specify." "He's a threat." "He's not." She said it without hesitation. "I assessed him. He's not a physical threat. You know that." "I know that you know that." He said nothing. She took a step closer. "Not aggressive. Searching. Why do you actually not want me around him?" The room was very quiet. "Because I don't," he said. "That's not enough. It should be." "It isn't." Her voice had dropped, not softer, more direct. "You don't get to restrict my movements based on something you won't name. That's not in the contract." Then consider the contract adjusted. Something flashed in her eyes. "Don't do that." "Don't do what?" "Use authority to avoid the real conversation." She held her ground. "I've worked for you for 6 months. I have given you everything this job requires. If you have a problem with how I conduct myself, say it plainly." He looked at her. His chest felt like something being compressed. I don't have a problem with how you conduct yourself, he said quietly. Then what? He was making you laugh. Silence. She stared at him. That's what this is about, he said. His voice was perfectly controlled. His eyes were not. You stood against that wall for 6 months and tonight you laughed with him in it. He stopped. Something moved through his expression that she had never seen before, something cracked, quickly covered, but not quickly enough. It bothered me. The air between them changed completely. She didn't look away. Taeyong. Don't. You need to hear yourself right now. I hear myself. Do you? She took another step. Because what you're describing is. I know what I'm describing. His voice dropped. Low. Careful. Like someone carrying something fragile across a long distance. I know exactly what I'm describing. And I'm telling you that I am aware that it is not rational, and I am aware that it is not in the contract, and I am aware, a pause, that you owe me nothing beyond what you're paid for. She was close now. Close enough that he could see her breathing change. Then why are you telling me, she asked. He didn't answer. If this story is pulling you in, like and subscribe right now. This is exactly what we create here, every single time. She left that night without resolution. She always left without resolution. That was the architecture of what they were, pressure building in a sealed space, neither of them willing to open the valve, both of them quietly suffocating. But something had shifted. She knew it. She lay awake in her apartment on the east side of Seoul and stared at the ceiling and thought about the look on his face when he said he was making you laugh, the way the control had nearly slipped, just for a moment, the way he'd looked stripped of something she couldn't name. She had seen Taeyong Moon face men who wanted him dead and show nothing. He had not been able to show nothing about this. That was the thing she could not put down. She came in the next morning the same as always. That was what she did, what she had always done. She kept the architecture intact, maintained the structure, because if she started dismantling professionalism as a coping mechanism she would have to acknowledge what she was coping with. He was already at his desk when she entered. Didn't look up. Morning, she said. Morning, he said. She ran the daily security check. Reviewed the access logs. Confirmed the schedule. All of it exactly as it had always been, except that the silence between them now had texture, had weight and heat and all the specific qualities of something that wanted to become a conversation. At 10 a.m., Baek Ji-young called. She was standing near the door when Taeyong took the call on speaker, out of habit, so she could monitor the tone of the exchange. Baek's voice filled the room, easy and social, confirming a follow-up meeting for the end of the week. Then, almost as an aside, tell your bodyguard I said good evening. She was good company. Taeyong's hand on the desk went very still. She's not here, he said. She was standing 8 feet away. Baek said something light and signed off. Taeyong set the phone down. He did not look at her. She did not speak. The tension in the room was almost a physical presence, alive, breathing, taking up space between them that neither of them crossed. Finally, she said, I heard that. I know. You told him I wasn't here. Yes. Why? He looked up then. Because I didn't want to have a conversation with him about you while you were in the room. Something in that answer landed differently than she expected. Not possessive. Not controlling. It sounded, for the first time, almost like honesty. She crossed the room. Slowly. Set her tablet on the edge of his desk and stood there, and for once she was not running a sweep or monitoring a perimeter. She was just, present. In front of him. Look at me, she said. He did. What is happening here, she asked. Not accusatory. Not soft. Real. He held her gaze. You know what's happening. I want you to say it. Gianna. Say it plainly. You told me last night to say things plainly. Do it. A long silence. The office was very still. Somewhere below, Seoul moved, traffic, voices, the ordinary machinery of a city that did not care about the extraordinary weight of this moment. He stood up. He was taller than her, though not by much, and standing he seemed to fill more of the room, all that controlled energy, that compressed authority, suddenly with nowhere to direct itself except here, at her, in this room where there was no performance and no audience. "You are the only person in my life," he said slowly, "who has never wanted something from me." She was quiet. "Every person in this building, every person in every room I walk into, is calculating what I can give them, what they can take, what angle works." He paused. "You just see the room. You see the threat. You do the job. You have never once looked at me like I was something to be leveraged. That's not. And I have been watching you for 6 months," he continued, and his voice was even, but his eyes were not, and somewhere in those 6 months it stopped being professional. "And I am telling you that because you asked me to be plain, and because," he paused again, longer, "I am not able to continue pretending the conversation last night didn't happen." She looked at him. Everything she was, the training, the professionalism, the walls built so carefully over years in a world that would exploit any gap, told her to step back, to reset, to return to the contract. She didn't step back. "You got jealous," she said quietly. He didn't deny it. "Over a laugh. Over the first time you looked like yourself," he said. "In front of someone else." That hit her somewhere she wasn't prepared for. She felt it move through her chest, not gently. "Taeyong." His name again. "This is complicated. I'm aware of that. You're my employer. I'm aware of that too. And this world you operate in, these people, the violence, the exposure. You know this world better than most people in it," he said. "You've survived versions of it before me. That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" She looked at him, really looked, the way she hadn't let herself look, not fully, not without the lens of the job between them. She saw the control and what lived under it. She saw the man who ran one of the most powerful criminal networks in Korea and couldn't maintain his composure over the sound of her laughing across a room. "The point," she said carefully, "is that I don't know what you're asking me." "I'm not asking anything." "You're asking everything," she said. "You just won't say it in a full sentence." Something in him shifted, almost broke, and he turned away, moved to the window the way he always did when he needed the street below to anchor him. The city again. The distance. She waited. "I can't lose you," he said finally, his back to her. I know what it sounds like. You're not mine. You've never been, I have never," he stopped. Started again, quieter. "I can't lose you, even though I never had you." The words fell into the room like stones into deep water. She stood there and let them sink. She didn't answer. Not with words. She stood in that office with everything between them unresolved and suspended, the jealousy and the restraint and the 6 months of proximity and the way he'd said the first time you looked like yourself in front of someone else, and she breathed, and she thought, and she did not run from it. She said, "I need to think." He turned. "Okay. That's not a no." Something moved through his face. "Okay," he said again, differently. She picked up her tablet. Moved toward the door. Stopped with her hand on the frame. She turned back, and she looked at him, that direct, full look, nothing professional about it, and she said, very quietly, "For the record." He waited. The laughing. She paused. Beck was funny. That's all it was. Another pause. "He's not who I think about when the room is quiet." She walked out. He stood at the window and did not move for a long time. The call came at 6 p.m. Miho, urgent, voice stripped of its usual ease, 2 of their men had been hit on the east side. Coordinated, professional, the kind of move that announced intent before the main play. Someone was escalating. Gianna was already in motion when Taeyong reached the corridor, earpiece in, jacket off, weapon at her hip, all warmth of the afternoon erased back into the operative, the professional, the person who existed in threat situations with total clarity. She looked at him. He looked at her. "Stay inside," she said. "That's not. I'm not asking." Her voice was flat and absolute and utterly calm. "I'm telling you. This is coordinated. They want movement. You move, you give them a target. Stay inside. Lock the floor. I'll have a perimeter up in 4 minutes. He held her gaze. Gianna. 4 minutes. She turned. Trust me. She was gone down the corridor before he could say anything else, already on comms, already commanding the security team in the crisp, exact language of someone who had done this 100 times in harder conditions. He stood in the empty corridor. He had faced war rooms and power plays and men who smiled while they tried to destroy him. He had never, not once, felt the specific fear of watching someone walk toward danger on his behalf. He understood, standing there, that this was not about the contract anymore. He didn't think it had been for a long time. He was still in the corridor 20 minutes later, having not, in fact, gone back inside, when she came back. Clean. No injuries. Face calm. The situation resolved in the background, her team already managing the aftermath. She stopped when she saw him. I told you to stay inside, she said. I know. Taeyong. I couldn't. He said it plainly. The way she'd asked him to be. I couldn't stand inside a locked room not knowing. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she walked to him, steady, deliberate, covering the distance between them like she'd decided something, and she stood close, closer than professional, and she looked up at him with those dark calm eyes that had never once been fully unguarded with him, until now. I'm here, she said. Quietly. I came back. I see that. Then go back inside, she said. And we'll talk. When this is over. We'll talk properly. He said, if you walk away now. I'm not walking away. She held his gaze. I'm doing my job. There's a difference. And you? She paused, something shifting in her expression, something careful becoming something real. You should know by now that I don't leave. She turned. Walked back down the corridor toward the active situation, already on comms, already 10 steps ahead. He watched her go. And for the first time in 6 months of silence and restraint and carefully controlled wanting, Taeyong Moon smiled. Small. Private. The kind that doesn't need an audience. She hadn't said everything. Neither had he. But she hadn't left. Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere in the east, the situation was being resolved. Somewhere, Baek Ji-young was probably laughing with someone about something easy and inconsequential. Inside this building, in this corridor, something had cracked open that would not close again. Not a love story yet. Not finished. But begun, finally, irreversibly, completely. If you made it to the end of this story, you already know what to do. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because this is exactly what we do here. Every story, every time. Comment below, should Gianna tell him how she feels first, or should Taeyong break completely and confess everything? The next chapter depends on you. Don't leave without subscribing. This story isn't over.